Welcome to Pitmaster, an Old Virginia Smoke podcast. My name is Luke Darnell. I'm your host. And we have with us today Brian Corbett from Smokin Skullies, longtime friend, longtime contributor to the podcast. And we have David Moore with Hot Mess Barbecue. This is his first time on the podcast, but I'm sure it won't be the last. How you guys doing this evening?
Doing quite well, Luke. Thank you very much.
Great, man. Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you guys. That was a cool little video we had there, huh? I literally just put that together in like 5 minutes on using a Canva.
Did you
The
really?
internet is amazing. It really is, but it's terrifying as well. We're all doomed. We're all doomed. So, one of the things that I know I've talked about with both of you independently, but I thought it would make for a good podcast is the taking of barbecue classes. There are a lot of options out there in terms of people putting on barbecue classes. I teach classes. Brian's taught classes. Um, I think it's a really fascinating part of our hobby in how people approach it. So I'm going to start with you, Brian. You've been cooking for about the same time that I have. What what makes you decide to take a barbecue class, and what are you hoping to get out of a barbecue class?
What makes me decide to take a barbecue class is kind of staying fresh is a lot of it. You know, I've been doing this a while, like you said, like yourself, Luke, and not that there's always going to be some sort of an earth-shattering, recipe that nobody's ever tried. Is a lot of some of the same usual suspects as far as ingredients, rubs, injection sauces, that kind of thing. So I don't expect to catch a new recipe that's going to just change the barbecue world. Um, but for me, a lot of times it's just staying fresh. You get in a rut sometimes when you've done it as long as we do, and you just kind of fall into that going through the motions. And I've been guilty of it, going through the motions, falling into that rut, and my scores drop, and I, throw my hands up in the air and go, I'm doing the same stuff I've always been doing, and turns out I'm probably not. I've tweaked it here, tweaked it there, removed this, and and it just kind of gets me locked back into a more detailed process. Doesn't have to be extremely detailed where there's 200 ingredients. That's not what I mean, but detailed to the point that I'm locked into what I'm trying to do. I'm not just cooking I don't mean this in a derogatory. I'm not cooking a backyard rib that my family's going to eat for Saturday night dinner. You know what I mean? It's a competition rib, whether it is backyard or pro, doesn't matter. Or master series, should I say? Oh, I can't hear you, Luke. David, can you hear
I can't hear him either.
No,
Okay.
I'm trying to be professional and put myself on mute, but fuck it.
And
I'm
the
not
second
going
one,
to.
I think you said, what am I looking to get out of it? And I kind of touched on that a little bit.
Yeah,
Is oftentimes every class I've ever taken, I've gotten a little nugget here, a little nugget there, a detail on a technique. A lot of times that's around wrapping and finishing. Specifically for me, that really just kind of is a little bit of an aha moment or something that I know I can incorporate um, fairly seamlessly, hopefully, into my program that helps me be more consistent. That's really what I'm looking for and what I get out of it.
right on. David, now you were a rookie in the Master Series last year, but I also know that part of your winters is spent, going on barbecue walkabouts and checking out different classes. How do you make decisions on what classes you want to take in this early stage in your already quite successful career? What are you looking to gather?
So I think the core piece for me is I'm not looking to cook better barbecue. I am looking to be a better competitor, right? And I think it's a fundamental difference. I'm not just out there looking for recipes, looking for the latest rub, but how do I become a better competitor in doing that? And so when I first started, I've taken a lot of classes. So each winter, my rule is I don't take classes before the season ends or after the season starts. So I mean, for me, that is the end of October through the beginning of March. I will pack 2, 3, 4 classes into that time, um, and try to get a good kind of spread of cookers, regions, and pieces and parts. But in the beginning, I was looking for, hey, I want to take the best pieces and best recipes from every single cook. And what I quickly learned is you can't do that. Every cooker's different. Everybody's cooking at different temperatures. You can't take the best piece of chicken you've ever had, the best rib you've ever had, the best piece of pork, and make a perfect cook out of it. So now I look for a lot of similarities. So what are people doing over and over and over again that built the basics? And I think that's what got us successful very quickly, because there was not a lot of trial and error. It was okay, everybody, Brian's chicken the night before. Okay, fine. Put that on the schedule for day one, whatever it is. But finding those commonalities and then being able to taste the food and understand the textures and flavors that are coming out. And that's really what I focus on, class in, class out.
That's really interesting because when you look at, I have a folder of notes from barbecue classes that I've taken over the years, and I think a lot of it is addressing those similarities. But you know, at some point, I'm looking for an outlier thing or two. I guess I'll give my answer to this question as well, in that I'm looking for. I'm going to a 4-meat class. I'm looking for 2 to 3 things.
Mhm.
2 to 3 little things that could be just as simple as, like a pre-shot routine, or, something that you do right before bed that makes your day the next day easier, to, like Brian was saying, a brisket wrap, or, a method of folding the foil. I mean, I've seen several different things of that have, absolutely changed my game. And I'm looking for those 3 little things, because my mindset on it is, if I can get one more point out of my chicken and 2 more points out of my brisket, I'm all of a sudden not going to be fifth anymore. And behind hot mess, I'm going to be third or second or first,
Yeah.
you know, and that's what I'm looking for, those little things. And I think we all agree that's where we are. But Brian, if we can come back to you, talk more about, the decisions on which classes you're taking. Are you looking for something that is cooker specific, or are you looking for something that's, somebody that's been successful?
So I'm looking for both, Luke. That's a great question, and I think it's something that a lot of people should consider year in and year out. Um, David, you probably know most of the people, a lot of people that will be listening to this know I'm a stick burner. It means I cook on an offset cooker. It's an Outlaw insulated firebox, 2660 barrel. Have a couple of them, so it depends on my setup as how I'm gonna travel. So when I'm looking for classes, I like to find stick burner is my first go to. There's a lot of people that are very successful with cans. I know there's some people doing some pellet cookers. There's been classes over the years with, the gravity feed cookers and water smokers and whatnot. There's nothing wrong with any of that. I just don't think that all the time that I'm not going to say the recipes won't translate, but the timelines often won't translate from their cooker to my style of cooker, which is an offset insulated firebox. And so that's the first thing I look for, is what kind of cookers are they using on a regular basis. They might regularly cook stick burner and maybe occasionally go to a can if they're going light and fast or flying in or something. I'm okay with that. I just want to see what they do most of the time. And then the second is success. What have they been successful? They don't necessarily have to be team of the year, um, but have they been successful in their region? Maybe there's a category that I might have struggled in for a year or two. that I want to really kind of hone in on, and they've been ultra consistent in that category and finished at the top of the team of the year standings. Not necessarily have to be the top, but up there. And every week when I look at their scores, they're top 10, top 5, top 10, top 5 in that particular category. Those two factors to me at this stage in the game for me is the biggest deciding factor. I don't look at regions. I don't care about that. I don't change anything when I go from one to the other. But I look at the style of cooker and their success, maybe more specifically in a category versus overall.
Okay. But David, you're looking more probably at, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're looking more at like success rate, maybe,
Yeah.
in terms of trying to figure out. Brian just held up an empty Scully, I believe.
I did in a Masters Cup.
Oh yeah, you got one, did you?
I did. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and look, I think it's a good point, right? Where we have been was trying to put together a timeline. So I cook on a Jambo, right, offset as well, and trying to put together a timeline and a set of recipes that work. So I was, in the beginning taking a much more broad swipe at it. I said, as time goes on, I get more specific, so now it's time to go. Let's look at somebody that cooks on a Jambo, not, any kind of offset, right, and start tweaking that. But for the first year, our last year in backyard and first year of Masters was really looking for, let's put a solid 4 meat program together that we can execute. And now I'm thinking about the tweaks to it and how do we move from a top 10 team to a top 5 team, right? And I think the focus in classes changes with that. I think I'll add one other thing to what Brian said too is I look at what the cooks, the instructors do outside of competition barbecue. So restaurateurs have a very different focus and bring a lot of different gadgets and things to the game. Folks that cook 30, 35 contests a year do things at scale that people like me that are cooking 12 to 15 a year never even think about. So I think there's pieces of those classes outside just the recipes of where those backgrounds are that can bring a lot to your cook. I kind of try to spread those out against people with different backgrounds as well, because I think there's so much more to learn from different groups of people that way.
Yeah, that's a great observation. And David, I know that you've taken either Lisa or Grace to classes with you before, haven't you?
Yeah, so for those I cook with my wife and my daughter. The three of us are hot mess together, and they have gone with me to class. So Grace has gone to several of them. Lisa's gone to several, and it's really an opportunity for them to see that, one, I'm not crazy with all the stuff that we're doing, but two, they get to taste the food, right? Because when we're turning in, we're all three tasting and making a decision, and so for them to understand what does perfect chicken feel like, what does a perfect rib texture wise taste like, what is too spicy, what's too salty. So yeah, I go to most of them by myself, but we try to get each of them in one a year with me as well.
I think that's a good strategy, and it's one that I've actually not embraced. Kim has never been to a barbecue class, and in all honesty, I should probably send her, and I should stay at home. The notes will definitely be better, but usually in a class that I go to, I usually have a friend there with me, and I think that's, I mean, to your point, David, going with somebody like Brian and I went to a class together this year, and I think it was extremely useful to have somebody to bounce ideas off of and to be like, "What did you think of that?" Would you agree, Brian?
I, look, I'm gonna tell you that was I've taken several classes. Matt Griner and I have taken a class together, and you know it's been fun. And yet, and same to the same token, but it's very cool to be able to kind of have that aha moment. And somebody may teaching the class may do something exactly like you're doing it already. Well, it gives us a chance to kind of toss a couple of thoughts back and forth. Hey, what were your thoughts on that? You know, yada yada with the ribs or whatever. And then after the class, we're eating dinner or having a drink or whatever we're doing. Before we go to bed, it's talk through a couple of things, or you're simply you're simply looking over your notes, and you may be able to just, hey, seems like I'm missing that step of whatever on the pork here. Did you grab that by chance? And it's really cool to cross reference and think it through and really gain other perspective. Because my take on a certain technique or detail might be a little bit different than Luke's, or maybe I just have a completely misunderstanding. That actually happened to us in our class. I didn't understand one concept of something, and Luke understood it very well. And I don't think he did initially, but he went and he went and got the information, and we were able to iron that out. And that was really cool, really really cool.
Yeah, and I know that David and I, when we've taken the same class, we share our thoughts on it too. It's
And never mind the fact that it's just more fun when you got a buddy there.
Yeah,
Especially if you're traveling somewhere, you're staying at some Holiday Inn or something. I mean, by yourself, it's nowhere near as fun.
Except for you get in more trouble that way.
You can.
You need accountability, buddy.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it's interesting when I'm trying to figure out how to say this without being a bastard, but traveling around and seeing, sometimes you see the same people at all the classes, and you wonder, why are they not getting it? And that's been one thing that I've been trying to ascertain is how can, as a teacher, how can I break through? What are some things that you think that you've seen other people do? How can I break through to those that just can't seem to get it?
I mean, I'll be glad to touch on that if you don't mind, Luke.
Sure.
People take classes, they go, they pay the money, they travel, they take all the notes. I've seen it in every class I've ever been. There's been people there that have written down every word that comes out of the instructor's mouth, or their cook team members or whoever. And then there's people that sit there, and it's almost like they don't want to be seen as the guy taking the notes. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want people to think I'm taking these notes because, I'm a pretty good cook here. So I don't want anybody to see me taking these notes. Man, Michael Jordan had a coach. You know what I mean? Tiger Woods had a coach. By God, write the notes down. We all struggled. Everybody struggled. And the second part of that is whether they take detailed notes or not, people in this world we live in of barbecue, they just want to do things their way. They might go take extremely detailed notes in Luke's class or my class, or, name a team of the year class, right? And they're going to go back and, just because their buddy makes his own barbecue sauce in the basement and sells it at the local hardware store, and gives them a sponsorship, i.e., 6 fresh bottles of sauce, instead of using what has been proven to win, they have to use my buddy Steve down the road's barbecue sauce because he gave it to me and he's my quote unquote sponsor. Well, guess what? Steve's barbecue sauce might be good in the cul-de-sac, but it's probably not going to be good in that white tin on Saturday afternoon at 12:30. I'm going to lay a bet there.
Right.
Not worth me taking a shot at it. And I gave a private class one time to a couple of teams, and it was at my house. I held it. It was a full-on tell-all for me with tell-all, and they were new teams, and we cooked the contest the very next weekend. And dude came up, one of the guys came up, and he said, "Look, man," he said, "really appreciate all you did. It was wonderful." And he said, "But I fixed your recipes." And I was like, "Oh." I said, "Oh, the recipes that you paid me for. Like, I didn't buy yours, you bought mine." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I fixed them." And I was like, "Let's see how this weekend goes." and
Right.
and I think he finished next to last. And the other guy that took the class was also at the contest, and I think he finished 6th or 7th, and it was his first top 10 ever. And I think I reserved it, but yeah, that guy, I don't think that guy ever got out of his seat again, but he fixed my recipes, and I was really pulling for him because I was going to go ask him what he did. But after that, I didn't want to know. So, but I mean, there's a lot of that. You know what I mean? Like I figured out what so and so does, but this is how I'm going to do it.
Right.
Well, and
What was your favorite?
I think when you go and take the class, right, talking about how do you digest it and why some people don't do well, is you have to be able to dissect, right? Dissect the superstition from the process, from the what's impactful, right? And I think some people go and they get all caught up in the superstition, right? The half cup measure doesn't have to be purple. I'm telling you, it doesn't have to be purple,
Nope.
but and there's some things that are important to somebody's cook that's part of their process that may not matter a hill of beans to you, right? Because it's not part of your process. But getting
Correct.
the person that pays attention and can pull those 2, 3, 5 nuggets out, that is something you can apply to your cook and it really makes a difference. That makes all the difference in the world, right? And so and if you're not paying attention and on top of it, and you don't bring it home and kind of process it, because you might not figure it out there, right? I've realized a lot of things on a 14-hour drive home from Missouri, right? Getting out of a class and going, holy crap, that's what he meant. I can do that, right? And being able to process and take all that information and synthesize it into what's really impactful and usable by you.
I think Luke and I have had the uh, same thing this year. It's kind of and I still use it, and I've had to alter it a little bit from one thing we learned in the class we took, and I believe Luke has had to alter his too, and it could be something to do with the elevation difference between where we are and that was, and it could be a number of factors, but I will say in this particular category, I have found myself to be more consistent um, by implementing that technique. But you're exactly right, David. And never mind the fact we haven't even introduced tenderness to this conversation yet. You can write down and have all the recipes you want to have.
It doesn't
If
matter.
buddy don't cook it right, I don't care what you inject, rub, sauce it, or finish it with. You could put $100 bills on it. You still aren't going to score if the tenderness is not right.
Yeah.
That's not often something that can really be taught in a class. You can tell, but it takes the experience of the field.
You know what? I tried to this weekend. I taught a backyard brisket class at Ace Hardware in Pinehurst, North Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
and I had 30 people there, and I had 2 hours to teach brisket.
Oh boy.
So I had briskets in different stages, right?
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I had, and then I knew that I could show them, was a Wagyu point left over from a contest. And I made sure that I had it all the way up to temp whenever it came time to temp it. And I let each one of them come up and take the thermopen and put it in there. And I'm like, that's what you're looking for. And everybody just kind of went back and sat down, and their mouth was kind of agape, like,
Yeah.
like, like I've never done that with anything in my life. What are you talking about? But it is a hard thing to teach. I think one of the things that frustrates me is sometimes you see somebody and they've taken 3 or 4 classes in the past 2 years, and you go ask them what's going on, and, well, I did this from this program and this from this program, and I think it's really just letting people know that that doesn't work. Um, there's a reason that some of these steps are done in different cookers with different ingredients, because they go together.
Correct.
And I think there's some people that can suss that out, and maybe there's some that they can't. But I really also believe in, and I don't know if you guys do this or not, but when I take a class, I then try and cook that program at least once.
I would advise it. I mean, if you paid and invested that money into your barbecue hobby, why would you not run the program in all 4 categories to a T? Now, you can do that in one of 2 places. You can do it at your house and see if you can repeat what you felt, smelled, and tasted at the class, or you can do it at a contest.
Right.
And not to say that if you take a class you're already doing poorly, but if it's a new team that doesn't really have a basis of what they do on a regular basis, man, there's nothing wrong with running that program that you just took all the notes of and paid the money for right down to a T at a contest. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I would encourage it in that scenario.
Yep.
I agree.
But David, you have to run it. You have to run it, man. Don't change it before you run it. It's crazy.
Yeah. David, you've done that?
I after every class, I come and cook the program from beginning to end. I don't do it at a contest, but I do it at home. So
yeah.
I'm looking at the timeline. And the other thing I do in class and that I'm testing for later is I try all the components, right? So if somebody's putting something in au jus, I'm going to ask them, can I come stick my finger in the au jus, right? I want to taste that piece of it, right? When I get a rib and go sit down and taste it, I see so many people go snatch up something and just start eating it right there. I go back to my seat, I feel it, I look at it, I try it, right? And I take notes on the tasting itself, like, oh, this is spongy, the tops, the one end's, firmer than the other. And that's what I'm trying to recreate. The flavor profiles, I'm pretty comfortable with my flavor profiles, but that cook, that timeline, the tenderness is what I'm trying to recreate after a class, especially if it's on the cooker I use. If it's somebody's cooking on an offset, I'm going to come run their exact program. If it's a drum, I may cook a part of it that I'm working on, but I won't try to recreate the entire cook end to end.
What do you cook on, David?
I cook on a Jambo.
Okay. What wood do you use?
Pecan.
Did it come from North Carolina?
It does now. It didn't used to, but it does now.
Somebody may have tipped them off. And I'll tell my experience. The first barbecue class I took was from Chris Hart with IQ. And it just so happened to be the week before our last contest of the year. And it was our first year. And I went up to Boston and took the class. And we didn't have a choice. We ran it that next weekend. From start to finish, ran that program, finished 7th, and then spent all winter with it. And that's another thing I think is very important is the timing of taking classes. Because you can't go take a class in February and then go cook a contest in March, in my opinion. You can go take it, but in terms of getting it, cooking through it, and then trying to implement stuff, I don't think I'm a firm believer of practicing, and that's why I generally, if I'm teaching a competition class now, I'm doing it in the beginning of December. I'm going to try and give somebody 3 months to digest what I told them.
When I only change small pieces of comp cooks as I go, right? Like most of us only change a small thing. So I'm still adding now what we're 5 comps in since my winter classes. I'm still adding things and changing things in our comp cook that I learned, in those classes. Because I can't process doing them all the same time and changing the entire cook.
Right.
I thought, I liken it to an old Western holster belt. You've seen the old Westerns when they got the pistols in it, and then there's all the bullets going around the belt. All those notes and details and things that you think you might want to try, or even if it's something that you think might be a little bit weird, every one of them is a bullet in that belt. Yeah. And because on a Saturday morning, when a contest is going on, Mother Nature may throw you a curveball. The protein itself may throw you a curveball. And having all of those bullets in the brain, the proverbial bullets out of the belt in the brain, sometimes you can just say, hey, I thought it was weird, but this thing's flat. It's just not there. It's just not what mid-pack's going to be mid-pack brisket. Why not throw something at it? You know what I mean? And that's when you can incorporate. Don't mean you have to do it every time, but I can use it this time,
And to use your analogy, though, I think you can be quicker with taking the bullet out of the chamber and not shoot. And was it last 2 weekends ago? There was something that I had learned this winter, and I added it to my program. I added it to my rib program, and I straight up forgot to do it. And took a bite of the rib. The rib was a better color, and I was like, "Well, okay." And Kim was like, "Why is this better?" And I told her, I was like, "Well, I forgot to do X," and she was like, "What are you going to do tomorrow?" I was like, "I'm not going to do it again, and I'm going to see what
Yeah,
happens."
that repeats itself. Yeah,
And we won ribs, so you know, I try, like, one of the number one things that I always try and teach people in any class is that getting better is generally subtracting something from your program. It is never really adding something to your program. So I think, but you got to think in terms of that when you're taking the class, because you're looking at somebody else's process, and maybe you see some shit that you're doing that maybe you shouldn't be doing. You know, you got to
it's
assess
not
it back.
always about what they're doing.
Right.
Mm-mm.
I think you
And
got to.
I think it depends a lot. I mean, I'm a very simple process kind of guy. Luke, you've cooked beside me a number of times, and I mean, you've seen my stuff,
It's
and I have a couple of extra things here and there, which are those bullets that I'm, my analogy, in case I need them. But my basic program is, man, it's just that. It's a pretty simple one,
it's
and
very it's maddeningly simple. It
yeah, and but here's the deal. I cook by myself. So a
right.
lot of times you go take these classes, man, that team might be 3 or 4 people deep. David said his wife and daughter go with him every time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that's 3 people there that can assist in some way. And my wife and son used to go with me all the time. And when I started going by myself a lot more because of them not wanting to go as much, and I still wanted to cook, I had to figure out, oh wow, that's a lot of stuff to do. How can I do this and make it repeatable?
And
And
Lisa and Grace do all the real work. So let's not kid anybody here. Luke can attest for that.
well, I'm glad that you got it in because I was getting ready to put it in there.
And
Yeah,
what I was leading to there is the fact that yes, looking at what somebody else does may mean that you're subtracting something from your program. You don't have to add, you don't have to replace. Sometimes
well,
that's a bit much situation.
and I don't mind sharing this. We cooked next side by side to each other last year in North Carolina,
Yeah.
and after pork turn in, you weren't critical of me,
No.
but you said, "How's your brisket?" And I said, "It's really good." And you were like, "Don't fuck it up like you did that pork." And mind you, folks, he didn't try it. He didn't do
Nope.
anything except just watch me sit there and just make poor decision after poor decision. But it made me really look at what I was doing, because sometimes a fresh set of eyes, you know, it doesn't hurt ever, in my opinion.
That's right.
The
So
other thing not to forget is it's not all recipes, right? It's
right,
not all the
No.
cook. It's how people set up. It's what equipment they use. It's I've learned a lot of things of just like Amazon stays open when I'm in a barbecue class, right? And there are multiple boxes showing up before I even get home. Of I'm going to try this piece, I'm going to try that strainer, or I'm going to try this lighter, or whatever. And I'm pretty ruthless of throwing stuff out once it doesn't work. But I mean, looking at all those pieces and parts is sometimes more important than the recipe itself out there, and just in being able to manage your cook from beginning to end.
and
Agreed.
I'll shout out the Royal Oak Flame Saber that I was gifted, and that thing, whew,
She bad. She
it
bad.
is. She's you light that thing in a drum, it looks like a lightsaber. You're like,
Yeah, it
this is
does.
incredible. Well, I think part of this conversation though needs to be a touch of public service in that if you had to pick two, what are the two most annoying things that you see in barbecue classes? Doesn't have to be from the teacher, but can be from attendees or whatever. And it doesn't have to be two, it could be 100, but
People that want to teach the class rather than take the class. I don't care. Yeah, everybody is. Well, have you ever seen somebody do this? Or here's how I do it. Why don't you do it the way I do it? I didn't pay money to hear how the person sitting beside me cooks. I just stop, listen, take notes, ask questions about what's going on. I'm not looking for your input.
Ding, ding, ding. Give him his prize, Luke. David just won. Yes, that is the most annoying thing is this is how I do it. This is how have you ever asking the teacher, have you ever tried this? I did it one time and finished fifth in pork. That guy just finished first in pork last year in the whole country. Like kudos to you. You caught lightning in a bottle once, but
Right.
that is the most annoying thing. And I honestly, that was going to be my exact answer, and I can't think of anything else that's right now. I'm sure I can in a minute, but that's the most annoying thing.
I mean, and I start my class with, one of the things I say several things in the beginning of my class. Number one, I'm going to curse. I have a terrible mouth. Get over it. Number two, these are your notes. You paid to be here.
Yep.
You want to share them with a friend, I got no control over that. I see them on the internet.
Got a problem.
I'm punching you in the balls. I mean, that's the statement. Number three is nobody came here to hear what you do or what someone else in another class did or anything like that. Just keep that information to yourself. Again, that's your information. Nobody needs to know what Heath Rouse did in his class in my class. You know what I mean? But I will offer up another one of my pet peeves. Actually, I have two additional ones. Number one, I cannot tolerate when people ask the same question
Oh,
over and over again, and then they ask it again at the end of class. I'm like, what have you been doing with your time here?
especially if that question has also been asked by someone else. Yes.
Yeah. And then my other one is focused around maybe people who aren't teaching the class, but that are there
Mm.
and helping. And then they're trying to, interject their stuff in there. I'm not in. I've had plenty of people help me in my classes, and I've never had that happen. And it's very rare that happens. But you know, don't be a distraction for the people that are there to learn from somebody.
Yeah.
That's. But also, I've made great friends in classes. All throughout the past 12 years. That's been it's one of the cool things about going to them.
I
Meeting new
agree.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, and
I mean,
everybody in the room's there for the same reason, right? So it's
yeah,
easy to make friends when everybody's there that wants to compete, wants to have a good time, wants to do better, right? Where everybody's goals are aligned in the room.
Right.
well, and you probably met somebody like I've met people at classes that we were social media friends, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. And I might comment on their stuff. They might comment on mine. We've never actually met. They cook in a completely different region. We don't cross paths. Maybe the Royal or something. But and you get there and you look and you're like, I'm pretty sure that's that David Moore guy, man. He comments on my stuff. I comment on his. You know what I mean? And you can strike up a conversation and actually put human interaction to the social media background. It's just cool to do that.
Yeah.
I get distracted pretty easily in classes sometimes, though, with
You
like
do.
tertiary things happening in the background.
You do.
I'll tell this story just because I know that he thinks it's funny. But like when I took Travis Clark's class, I couldn't help but make a tick mark of how many times he said "fuck" in the class.
You ran out of paper.
I stopped. No, he only got to 93, and I told him at the end of class, I was like, "It's like 93 fucks," and he's like, "That's it." I mean, he was shocked. It was, you know, but again. Each one's different, and I hope people listen to this podcast and take some stuff away from it in terms of how to suss out the stuff that you need. David, I think you said something very, very interesting, which was how do you determine what's real and how do you determine what's superstition? That's a big thing. That's a big point. I told that story in class this weekend. I said, for years I cooked at 234. Not because 234 is a magic temperatures, because I was drunk one night setting the guru and I didn't get it to 235 and I won brisket the next day.
And so that just became your thing. Yeah.
Right. And some of the stuff I teach, I tell people, they're like, why do you do that? I'm like, because it worked once.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, here's a question for you guys. What do you think about virtual classes, right, versus in-person classes?
I think they could be a great baseline. And I think sometimes it can kind of freshen you up. It goes back to what I said earlier, is part of why I like to kind of freshen up, refocus, kind of gather. I think they can help you there, because it gets your mind back onto the details that this person is talking about. You don't get the chance to feel it, taste it, smell it, experience it, um, but I think it could help you with a good baseline and help you to refocus. Um, I'm This is not a promotional, but I know Luke has his classes on the was it the Barbecue All Stars or whatever the thing is.
BarbecueChampsAcademy.com.
Barbecue Champs Academy. Yeah, sorry about that.
Slash Luke Darnell.
Yeah. So, but I mean, and you can buy those categories individually. Well, I have done that before. Struggled in a category and just you talk to people that you trust and help, and you try things, and it's just like, all right, I'm gonna go buy Luke's rib class and just see if I just can't refocus myself and take away all this stuff I'm throwing at the wall and seeing if it sticks, and let me just dial this thing back in.
Mhm.
So I think the online stuff can really be a big factor there.
Well, that's how I tend to use it too, as individual meets, right?
Mhm.
The thing I think you lose in the virtual world is what I call the dance, right? Which is really the timeline of how the four meats are interacting with each other and what's coming off. And I got to spin the brisket, I got to parquet the pork and wrap the ribs all at the same time.
Hang on, Brandon, let me get
How am
hang
I
on.
working that thing? But yeah, I agree. It's a great place, especially. But you got to know the instructor, right? Just all the stuff on YouTube. If you don't know who it is,
Oh man,
there's very little credibility in my mind around it.
when you're saying virtual classes, I'm thinking if I don't have to put my credit card in, I
Right.
probably don't need to be giving it so much credit. I'll
Yep.
be honest with you.
It's worth what you pay for it. I agree.
Right. And well, I mean, to go a step further, I think the virtual classes have changed the game. In
Explain.
terms of in terms of you're starting from zero, right?
Yeah.
And say you go and you buy a barbecue league membership and you've never cooked competition pork in your life, and you watch Brad's video and you write it down and
Did it. Won first place pork.
yep, on my drum.
First on your drum. First time I ever cooked pork in my life.
You know who can't win pork on that drum? Me. Brad's won pork on that drum. Tim's won pork on that drum. David's won pork on that drum. Not even on my trailer. Um, which is funny. But those are things that it's shortened the learning curve. Everyone talks about barbecue's not the same because random teams can win and stuff, but they've got more knowledge than we ever had 12 years ago.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, to learn something 12 years ago, you needed to go to a campfire, take a bottle, and shut the fuck up and sit there and listen. And that's how you learned. And then
Yep.
you're only getting one or two things.
And you better pick them up.
Yeah. And you better be grateful and thankful and make friends with
Absolutely.
everybody that told you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, I think this has been a great conversation, guys. I think since having the class with Brian and spending some time with David and then teaching a couple of times and really focusing on how people are learning in my class. When people send me their notes to look at them, I'm blown away. I'm like, I didn't even come close to saying that, And granted, there's some things that I don't think we'll ever be able to fix in that regard, but I think just laying down a basis about what we're looking for, I think is going to be good for people out there in barbecue land. So
Yeah, I agree.
yeah. I want to thank you both for being on. I gotta have a David Moore specific episode soon though, because he keeps just tearing it up.
It's been a good year so far. We're having fun.
He was accurate earlier. Grace and Lisa do an incredible amount of work. It is yeah, he is taking it to a whole new level. Like he walks in and it's all ready for that category, Brian. And then when that category is done, he goes away. And then he comes back in for the next one, and that's all ready. It's impressive.
It's like a surgeon, right? The surgeon doesn't set up the operating room, right? The surgeon's just there to do the operation. So
Good point.
Meanwhile, Brian's got his, for lack of keeping it in the medical world, Brian's got his mobile medical table with him and just throws it down. And let's get to work.
That's it. Let's go. Let's go. I'm more of a war zone hospital. You might be Duke University Medical Center. I'm like, cut it off at the knee. Let's go. Let's go.
Oh, you don't know what you just said. You said Duke Medical Hospital to a North Carolina grad.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm a Tar Heel fan. I don't know why I said that. My apologies to the entire Tar Heel Nation out there.
There you go.
When you said it, I couldn't believe it either. I was like,
I think it's the color scheme you got here on the screen threw me off. Maybe I don't
know. I did do that, didn't I? I'm playing with new things today. I like this one. A little weird. That's not bad. Hey, that's Mountaineer colors. We'll stick with that. But yeah, thank you guys very much for coming on. Really appreciate it, and hopefully this finds it to the right ears, and when people go to their next class, they can maybe look at it a little differently. So thank you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Luke.
It's been an awesome time as always, Luke. I love doing these things with you, and hopefully I'll get a chance to do some more if I'm ever invited back.
Always. Always.